Hello, everybody. Welcome back. And guess what? It's one of those Game Master preparation times. This is a work day where I will go over the basics of building a skill challenge. This is not the skill challenge for Dungeons and Dragons for 4E, although that's where its origins are. What you see before you is the 4E Dungeon Master Guide and the second one that was made for 4E. And although we'll be using some concepts from here, we're not using all of them. So for those of you who are worried that we're just duplicating what 4E did know, that's absolutely not what's going to take place. My suggestion is grab some food, some drink, make sure you're comfortable, have your questions ready, turn your brain on, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a presentation first. This is pretty much the same presentation I've been giving for quite some time. I do apologize that the sound is quite low for some reason. It has nothing to do with what's happening at my end. It seems to be what's going on at YouTube's end, as far as I can tell, because it doesn't have an update involved. I'm going to put up a poll. Feel free to take part in that. You're probably going to find you're going to have to crank up the sound on your phone or your desktop in some cases. I do apologize for that, but there's not much I can do. Anyway, a lot of this has got, I've got a presentation. I'm going to use some slides. How's it going? Prepare, cook, and survive. Welcome. And then we'll go straight into the actual main presentation. Okay. Of course, you'll get to ask questions like we always do. We always have questions at some point. So let's get ourselves organized and get started, eh? Hi, welcome to How to RPG. My name is Fred Wheeler, and today I want to talk about role-playing games. This is a Game Master preparation lesson. This is lesson 7, creating skill challenges. And is the word skill challenge a good indication of what we're talking about? Probably not. This is not the 4E skill challenge. This is heavily modified and updated so that it does the job that it needs to do. I will also like to point out you could also key it or describe the skill challenge as an action challenge or an adventure challenge. That is really what it is. Okay, let's have a look at what's going to be the overview. Why use a skill challenge? I'm going to talk to you about that. How to create a skill challenge. The player's actions in a skill challenge. What will they be? The skill challenge consequences, because we need to have consequences for anything we do. And with a skill challenge, an action challenge, or an adventure challenge, the same thing would apply. And then I always give miscellaneous recommendations. Now, when I run these, my objectives is to explain how to create the skill challenge for a role-playing game. Not Dungeons and Dragons, but any role-playing game that you're playing. Okay? Although I'll be using a lot of the mathematical and mechanical aspects of Dungeons and Dragons, you can probably port a lot of this over to whatever game you're playing. I'm going to demonstrate the process of building a skill challenge. So today, we're going to build a raft traveling down a river on rapids. I thought that was probably something you'll use more often than anything else, and it seemed to be what people were wanting in the poll that I put up. So yes, if you wanted to have a canoe trip with your party or a raft, or maybe they're hanging onto a log, we're going to do that. And we're going to practice that process. I'm going to ask you a lot of questions to help you and help me fill in the details. I have done a few shortcuts here, so I've got a jump on things. Okay. Why use a skill challenge? That's our first question. A skill challenge tells part of the adventure's story in a cinematic manner that is broader than just using combat, or casting a single spell, or making a single dice roll. I would also like to point out that a skill challenge is not just dice rolls. It could be, but it's probably not. Skill challenges are good for action scenes where there's some sort of action taking place, but it's not a battle or a fight. Large-scale battles, it does work because large-scale battles are difficult to duplicate in a role-playing game without playing a tabletop war game. And then traps. I find that traps work very well with a skill challenge. Now, there may be other things that work well with this, but I find that those three things are the ones that work the best. If the skill challenge doesn't have enough scenes or events to overcome, then it's best not to use a skill challenge. So if you don't have enough things going on, okay, without adjustment, just don't use it, okay? Sometimes it's fine to resolve a problem with a single action or a dice roll mechanic if you wanted to, but don't call it a skill challenge because it's not anymore. Skill challenges don't work well as combat encounters, as I mentioned, but they also don't work well as a puzzle. Puzzles are their own thing. You need to approach them differently. And the best person to talk to about puzzles, in my opinion, is Wally DM. Social interactions. I know some people like to use them for social interactions or researching, some sort of research activity. And I've found that they generally do not work well. So I don't recommend skill challenges for that purpose. So how do you create a skill challenge? Well, design your skill challenges with a series of narrative events. This is very important. The key thing to remember is it's a series of scenes or narrative events. They are obstacles for the player characters to overcome. Define a really clear goal for the whole skill challenge, but also define clear goals for each stage of the skill challenge with a consequence for success and a consequence for failure at each stage. So we're looking at basically some sort of consequence or failure possibility for the entire skill challenge, but at each stage we also have to have a separate consequence. Involve everybody in the skill challenge with a group dice roll test. If you're going to use dice roll tests, then make sure it's a group check. You do not want to have just one person making the dice roll. Otherwise, just a few player characters with really high attributes or abilities or skill bonuses will dominate the entire thing, and we don't want that. You want to involve everybody, otherwise there's really no point doing it. Don't have a long skill challenge. I recommend between 3 and 4 group dice roll tests, okay, or at least 3 or 4 scenes that you would play out. That's my recommendation in terms of the maximum. You don't want to have more than that. Now, I know that if you look at how the 4E skill challenge was built in the past, that was not the recommendation. But this is based on experience and the fact that a lot of the stuff that was found in the 4E Dungeon Master Guides, the first one and the second one, was also superseded by feedback that was given by the designers who said, well, actually, you need to do it this way because it doesn't work very well otherwise. But that never went to print. Arrange different consequences for failing a step in the skill challenge or the overall skill challenge. Now, these could be anything from losing fate points, if you have fate points or hero points or action points in your game. Maybe it's going to be health points or hit points, morale, may affect morale in some way. Maybe you're going to lose hit dice if you use hit dice, or spells or spell slots, gaining a condition, exhaustion, fatigue, or even like a story-related consequence can be really good as a consequence for failing at some step. Events or obstacles could or will end, so anytime you have an event or an obstacle in your skill challenge that could or will end that skill challenge, it should always be placed at the end of the skill challenge. If you have more than one event or obstacle that could potentially end the skill challenge completely, remove it from your skill challenge completely and retain only one and lay it at the very end. It's the last step. So that's the process for building your skill challenge. But we're not finished yet because there's actually a bit more. Players' actions in a skill challenge. I think this is the thing that people struggle the most with. Explain that players need to state the action the character is going to make, not just pick an attribute or an ability or a skill dice roll test to make. It's not like, I would like to make a stealth check to sneak past the guards. No, we're not trying to do that. No, you get them to tell you, the game master or dungeon master, what they want to do, and then you determine what skill or attribute or ability is appropriate in this case, unless they have a special feature that they need to talk about. That's when it comes to dice rolls. That's just the first part of this though. Try to use different attributes or abilities or skills in your skill challenge. Now, this means don't rely exclusively, if you can, on something like strength or dexterity or agility or might or anything like that. You don't want to sort of rely on one for the same step each time if you can. But you don't have to avoid the same attribute or ability or skill in a sequence. If it makes sense for the story narratively or the adventure challenge that you're presenting, then that's fine. But you don't want to build it in as a definitive if you can. It's wise to allow secondary attributes or abilities or skill dice roll tests, if you're going to be using skill dice roll tests, to gain something like advantage or disadvantage. Maybe a disadvantage will be applied, putting in benefits of some kind, whether those are minuses or pluses, penalties, to the main dice roll test. So secondary checks are really useful because they allow for a wider range of potential attributes and abilities and skills and knowledge to be impactful on what the player characters are trying to do in that adventure challenge or skill challenge. So remember, secondary checks should be a thing. Next, skill challenges don't have to include an attribute, ability, or skill dice roll test necessarily. Now, this is the design default as it looks like in the Dungeon Master Guides for 4E, but you can also use a saving throw dice mechanic, you can also use an attack roll dice mechanic, or you could just exclude all dice rolls completely. It may not even apply. The only reason we call it a skill challenge and the only reason that the default is rolling dice is because, frankly, players like rolling dice. But there are other ways of dealing with a skill challenge that do not involve just rolling dice. And these are still completely legitimate, and I would certainly recommend using them. Something like a class or race feature is really useful. Allow them to use those features. Something like a spell or a magic item that has a special feature to it or effect. Clever ideas, the smart use of mundane equipment can result in automatic success, or potentially replace the dice roll test for an individual and possibly a group dice roll test if you're using tests as sort of your default. So all of these are probably more important than rolling dice. We want our players to use up class features. We want them to use race features. We want them to use their spells and their magic items. I want them to use their equipment, and I want them to come up with smart ideas. Why is that? Because it just makes the old experience of playing a role-playing game and using a skill challenge far more interesting and exciting, and we can drain their resources, which is one of the things you're trying to do with a skill challenge. It's not to kill them, okay? We're not trying to kill the player characters. We're just trying to drain their resources and making it exciting. There's still always the possibility and risk in some way, but it's kind of a semi-illusion in some respect. Be wary of players trying to get success for the entire group with a single high dice attribute, ability, or skill bonus, because there are going to be people who have built their character for a very specific purpose, and they will have high attributes, things like the rogue and the expertise if you're playing 5e, anything like that, skill monkeys in particular, potentially capable of dominating a skill challenge. So you do not want to allow that to happen if you can. Be wary. That's why I recommend make sure everything that takes place, everybody has to take part. Nobody gets to opt out. Okay. Next, skill challenge consequences. Now we know how our players could potentially respond. We need to determine what sort of consequences we'll use for the skill challenge. Don't be married to a skill challenge being failed overall with a set number of failed dice roll tests, even if that is the usual method, and it is the usual method. In fact, this can undermine your skill challenge almost completely. Avoid breaking the narrative of an action scene by saying you need to have three failures for your group, three successes for your group before you get 2 failures, or you need to get 4 successes or 5 successes before you get 3 failures. That is actually going to undermine the skill challenge. So depending on the situation, it may not be wise to use that. In fact, you might be better off to eliminate that aspect of it completely and simply break it down to individual consequence. If a player chooses not to take part in the skill challenge, then because the group should be involved in this scene, this action, this adventure scenario, you're going to count that as an automatic failure for the individual, and also contributes to the group check as a failure because they would not take place. If you do not act, you fail. This is one of the problems you'll find, is that players, when they know their numbers aren't very good and they're not very creative, and they know that they're not going to do very well with rolling dice, they will choose to opt out. and do not let them opt out. If they opt out, they fail. Set a target number or difficulty class or DC that makes sense for the character's actions, not the character level. That is not the dial we use for balancing things. To ensure each stage of the skill challenge is fair and balanced to a certain degree, divide the character with the least number of maximum hit points or health points by the number of sequences that inflict injuries. And that is how much health or hit points each stage will reduce them on average. So basically, what you do is you look at the average damage that each scene will inflict. You add them all up. So if they were to fail every single scene, every single stage in the skill challenge, add all that damage up, that average. And if it adds to the maximum hit points of the character with the least amount of hit points or health points, then your skill challenge is too deadly, okay? Because you're not trying to knock people out and force them to become unconscious or kill them by using a skill challenge. It is still possible to occur if the dice are extremely, well, they work in your favor. If they work in the favor of the game master or dungeon master or work against the players, dice rolls can do that. They can range. But if you're working with the average, that's what we can deal with. Adjust the consequences of failure to reflect the party and the character level by using, and my suggestion is, using the concept of trap damage severity by their level. Most game systems have sort of something set up that allows you to determine sort of what is considered a setback. Okay, so using trap damage severity by level, there's a table in the Dungeon Master Guide for D&D 5e that does this on page 121, and any other system that you have probably has something like this. Pathfinder 2nd edition, I believe, has something very similar. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to target the least amount of damage that they would take, okay, rather than the maximum amount of damage they could potentially take for their level. You know the skill challenge is too hard, as I said, if the character with the least amount of hit points or health points would die if they fail every stage of the skill challenge using average damage. Okay, so that is how you build it. But I always like to give out a few miscellaneous recommendations, and I have a few for you. Don't break the narrative of a scene presented by a skill challenge. The narrative, how it works out, is more important than game mechanics. So anything that you sort out, anything that you've already predetermined, it never supersedes the narrative because of the nature of role-playing games and the fact that people can do anything they want. People will come up with ideas that will completely break down your mechanics. So don't let that occur by being connected and tied to the mechanics, and it has to be done that way. Okay? You need to be far more flexible. Don't let players come up with contrived rationales why they would use a particular skill or a particular action. It might apply in their head, but if they describe it to you and it simply just seems completely ridiculous, then don't allow it. You do not need to allow it. You just say you have to try something else that does not seem feasible. Because remember, players will game the system, they will metagame, and they will. You can convince anybody anything if you spend enough time. It's just the gift of the gab. So if it's contrived and it doesn't make sense, then don't allow it. If the skill challenge becomes a series of attribute, ability, or skill dice rolls, as I've said, it is most likely going to be a poor experience for you as the game master or dungeon master and your players. So if all you wind up doing is having your players rolling dice, it's probably a failure in terms of a skill challenge. Now, running these things is actually not that easy as a game master or dungeon master. And as a player, sometimes it's hard to get your head around them. A bit of practice is required to get people into the process. I recommend do not tell them it's a skill challenge. Simply present the situation and then get them to tell you what they're going to do. If you keep it narrative, then the mechanics you can build around it. Avoid focusing on the mathematics of the game because this creates a lot more work for you as a game master. Okay, and it makes it much harder for player characters to succeed when they have a smart idea. This is one of the biggest problems with the skill challenge, because they are very mechanical. When you look at the very first early ones, they just seem like a set number of dice rolls before you fail a certain number. And if that's all that you're going to do, then I wouldn't even bother using skill challenges. I would just go just find some other way to resolve it. Look, I want to thank my patrons who support me so I can do this program. This program runs every 2 months. We come back round, I present it to you, and then we actually build a skill challenge in the live stream. So I want to thank you. I want to thank you for watching, and hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s. Okay, I'm back. A little bit waffly today, but I got through it. Now, for those of you who have been here before, you will know that what I've just said is very much what I normally say. Like it's not outside the realm of what I've normally said, which is fine. What I'm going to do is I've been looking at the skill challenges that we have. So the skill challenge, how to create skill challenges, is actually on Patreon. Hello, Shiner81, how are you doing? So I've put the notes for how to build a skill challenge up on Patreon. If you want it in a written form, you can download that if you're a patron, and $1 a month does it. But also the skill challenges that we've made. So far we have made the Indiana Jones boulder trap, which is sort of the first scene that we get in Raiders of the Lost Ark. Okay, so we've built that as a skill challenge, and it's actually available on Patreon. We have a collapsing building as a skill challenge. We have a ship in a storm as a skill challenge now. We have a earthquake, and I'm sure there was one other, a chase scene in an urban location. So we have 5. This will make number 6. I am looking forward to the process of doing the raft traveling down the river rapids today, and I've got an idea of how to structure it. I've already sort of started to build a little bit of it to save a bit of time. What I'm also doing is I'm thinking for the future we probably want to do a minecart sort of roller coaster trip, kind of like Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. If you remember that scene, we'll duplicate that in the future. I don't know if that'll happen next time, but something like that, the minecart sort of roller coaster. We'll do a horse race or an animal race or like a dinosaur race, something that you can use with animals where there's a race taking place as a skill challenge, because that would make a good skill challenge as well. And there's a few others out there that are sort of percolating through my mind. One is trying to escape a giant sandworm, as in trying to escape the giant sandworms from June. I actually have written one a long time ago, but it was designed for 4E rather than for 5E, so it needs to be reworked. And I will certainly do that. So those are some of the ideas that are rolling around in my head. We may even do... I was actually considering doing a couple of other things too, and for the life of me, I can't remember what it was. I put it out in the poll, but it's sort of it slipped my mind. So let's. I'm going to get comfortable. You get comfortable. I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions, and we are going to fill out and make our River Rapid live stream skill challenge today. Let's see if I can just find everything. There we go. And I just have to, where is it? Properties. Okay, all right, so I've got that scene ready. Need to transfer over, so we are looking at the right document. Let's close this document, keep that document open. And this document here, close, so we got on the right document. And magnify, no, I won't magnify just yet. Okay, so I'm just gonna grab my phone, so I know it's loaded up. Okay, so look, I'm just going to switch you over so you can see what I can see right now, and then I'm probably going to magnify this. So this is what I've done. I've taken what we built in the past, which was called basically, I think it was basically a ship out in a storm. We made a skill challenge called a ship in the storm, and because it's got elements to it that are very similar to what we would need for traveling down some rapids, I'm reusing that. So you might find it's very similar in some respects. I'm doing that quite deliberately. One, to save time, but two, to help. Like a lot of these skill challenges that we've made in the past, you can repurpose in a different way. Like there shouldn't be any issue with you taking them and just repurposing them. Okay, it should be very easy to be able to do them so that they can do something else. Let's just pull up the chat here. And I'm going to just ask a question in chat very quickly. Hashtag. What obstacles or threats might be found traveling down rapids or river rapids? How's that? That is our question. Now, I've already kind of predetermined a couple of ideas that I thought were going to work pretty well. And certainly if you come up with a better idea than mine, then throw them out there now, and I will include them if I like them, okay? Or I might include them as a sort of some additional scenes you could build in if you wanted to, because I'm only going to do a basic 3, so no more than 3. And this is to save time. How's it going, Sir Rail Mill? How's it going, sir? How you going? Pish, not the band. The moment you know you are gonna sink in 90 miles per hour rocks with spiky points, roll saving throw in a desperate burp. Okay, all right. Rocks and debris. So first off, yes, hitting rocks. I agree. So we're going to have sharp rocks. Sharp rocks as obstacles. Fog is for a fast-moving river. Fog, I suppose you could use fog, but I don't think we'll use fog because it won't be quite as interesting. Shiner 81, but a waterfall, your fog idea we won't take, but the waterfall we're going to include. A waterfall is probably going to end our skill challenge. So the waterfall must be the last thing we deal with. Now, if you look at a movie and how it plays out, often if you're traveling down some rapids, the waterfall is the last thing. Because if we make the waterfall drop high enough, it's going to be pretty nasty. So it's going to probably mean people are going to wind up no longer in a boat or a kayak anymore, or no longer hanging onto a log if they're hanging onto a log, and they're going to wind up plummeting. So that's one of the things I would suggest is we definitely want the waterfall. So sharp rocks, waterfall, absolutely. Now, I was watching an old movie with Kevin Bacon and Meryl Streep called The River Wild. Now, The River Wild is a very good example of how you want to structure your skill challenge if we're going to go traveling on a raft down some river rapids. It has all of the different elements that you require. It has the rocks that you have to negotiate, the sharp rocks, where one, it will damage your raft or your kayak. Not only, so there's a major consequence. We already know it's nice and simple. It also has the waterfall. There's a number of them actually in that particular movie. But it also has what is called, I guess, is an undertow. And sometimes what can happen is in a river, you can have water feeding in from different directions because of the way the lay of the river is. Maybe there's multiple branches feeding into it, so you've got water rushing in from different directions, and it forms what is basically an undertow. You get like a whirlpool. So the water, it's like a hole. One of the worst things you can do if you're going whitewater rafting is to wind up taking yourself into a hole, because a hole can pull the whole thing down and the chances are you will not survive. It's very, very bad. And even if you do survive, it's exhausting. And of course, if it's one of the first things you have to contend with and you've still got quite a long way to go, you're going to get worn out very quickly. So the great thing about the whirlpool is we know exactly what our consequence is for a whirlpool. It's exhaustion. Yeah. if we fail this, we're probably going to get exhausted. We don't need to drown the player characters, but we can certainly exhaust them. So those are already things that we can utilize. What else have we got here, people? Piranha redhead fish with too many teeth and resistant to fire damage. So we're gonna skip that. So Shiner mentioned the whirlpool as well. So we're going to use the whirlpool. Mist, not fog. I would skip the mist idea. I think we have three things that really set apart the river rapids: the whirlpool, sharp obstacles and rocks projecting, poking out of the river itself that we don't want to bang into, that we have to avoid, and a waterfall. And we've got pretty much all the exciting elements that we need for our skill challenge. Yep. Hello, Derp. How's it going? Oh, this looks like a good one. I wish I didn't miss the start. I'll probably watch the beginning afterwards. So, Derp, I run the skill challenge game master preparation every 2 months. Every 2 months I go back to skill challenges and I present the presentation at the beginning is exactly the same. Occasionally I adjust it, but right now I'm pretty happy with the way it is, so I don't want to change something that's working. Do you know what I mean? +1 whirlpools. Yes, sinking. Yes, sinking is a bad thing too. In real life, orcas attacking boats off Ibra? Off Ibra, really? Okay, so let me get into here and do some adjustment. I think what we'll do is we're going to go whirlpool, because then we can get exhaustion in, and then we'll go with the rocks, and then we'll go with the waterfall being the last thing that we want to deal with. Okay, I think that's probably the best way to approach this. Now, if I don't see your comment in the chat, it's because I'm concentrating here rather a lot. So our first task is to shift some of these things around. A lot of this is probably unrelated to, yeah, it's very much unrelated to what we need. So what I'm going to do is I think I'm going to cut out a whole bunch of stuff. And breaking wind, sails. I think it was the last stage that I thought we could just duplicate and then readjust. Yeah. Oh, so I've got, that's right. I have 4 scenes in here. So rock or reef ahead. So rock or reef is our rocks and sharp. So we're going to make that our scene number 2. And then scene 3 is a freak wave is threatening to slam into the side of the ship and swamp it or flip it over. We can actually use this, I would believe, for our whirlpool or our undertow. And then our waterfall is going to be a little different. So it's not going to be like lightning. So we can get rid of that. So I'll just remove this. I'm just going to do a bit of restructuring and then I will get started, okay? Oops, get rid of this. We won't really get rid of that, that's fine. So next. And of course each stage, oh hang on, I almost forgot. There we go. I need to make sure I keep the structure, don't I? Let's do that again. Sorry about that, people. This is because if I try to write the whole thing out, now skill challenge does not need to be as complicated as what I'm about to do. Okay, it doesn't have to be this much. The only reason it is as big as this and is as complicated as this is because I'm building it for you to use, and because I'm building it for you to use, I need to ensure that I cover everything, well, as much as I can. So we've got exhaustion there. We can actually probably use that. So we'll cut that and keep those for now. Scene 1, scene 2, scene 3. And scene 3 is freak waves, flip. Right, so we're going to do a little bit of adjustment here. So we're going to go here. Rocks. So this is actually going to be scene 2. So we're going to just whip on down here and take this. And we'll go copy. I think it's copy. Copy. Yes, copy. And then we'll go to scenario 2, which is not lightning. It's going to be something else. This is, there are large, sharp rocks poking out of the churning water. And that will be the beginning of that particular scene. And then we'll go paste. And we'll make sure, okay. And this is not required, so we'll take this. Okay, so what we do want to have here is, now we're going to take that there. Punching a hole into the raft or the kayak is probably what we want to do, but more could happen. So I'm just going to restructure this again. What we got here? Hello, how are we doing here? Sink. Sinking is definitely a hazard. Yes, sinking is definitely a problem. Waves will bubble, decreasing wander. RP swirling. The raft is damaged and slowly sinking, potentially. Bloop. So what I want you to start thinking about is the whirlpool. I want you to start thinking about, like, how would you describe it? So how would you describe your opening scene? Hashtag. How do you describe the opening scene with the river rapids? So that's one of the first things we need to get right. While I'm structuring, I want you to start thinking about this. Okay, there are large, sharp rocks poking out of the churning water. The raft or canoe, or kayak. Canoe, kayak, it really doesn't matter. Kayak is being pushed toward the rocks and might punch a hole in the kayak's hull or break the raft. So that's our first or second scene. Our first scene is going to look a little different. And this scene here is water being pushed, if I remember right. There's a little bit of a mess here right now, people. Just give me time and I'll sort it all out. But so the rocks ahead, done. This one here is a freak wave. Our freak wave is actually probably our scene 1, because we can use a lot of that in this case. So we're going to go cut, take that out. Okay, cool. Scene 3, scene 2, scene 1. We're going to remove this. And I'm going to paste in here this bit. So this will be a whirlpool going down, down, down. We have a few things that are going on here, which I'll decide how do we make that work. We've got our scene 2, which we've already written, and our scene 3 will have to be the waterfall. Okay, play song by Rata, Round and Round. Yeah, I suppose you could. I suppose you could. Bear with me, people. I'm just trying to make sure I get all my ducks in a row right with this. All right. So I think I've got most of the structure where it needs to be. Just check. And then I've got to make sure I do the front section. And I do this. Okay. Okay. The river comes to a stop ahead. You can hear the thunderous roar of a waterfall. Your raft or kayak is being forced toward the drop-off. You don't know how tall the waterfall is. But the noise indicates indicates it must be large. Large, or do we want with large? How are we going to describe this? Do we want large or we want something else? You don't know how tall the waterfall is, but the noise indicates it must be large. Okay. The characters have to decide how to approach this new obstacle. Okay. Right, let's have a look at chat and see what people are saying. It's been bumpy so far. Ahead you see rapids. Further ahead you see fairy still waters. Fish jumps, pull out poles or paddles. Okay. Okay. Well, that's not a bad head into the to the scene. I think Sir Ryle, I think you got a good lead up to that. A mist hangs over the river ahead of you, ahead of your raft, and the roar of water reaches your ears. The current increases and your raft begins to buck and shift. Nice. Doesn't matter, the rapids are brief. Cast a line or dip a paddle. Whoa, okay. And the current increases and your raft begins to... Well, I think what we'll do is I've put in that scene there, so we know what that scene is, and we'll come back to it. We will come back to that scene soon enough because we've got that lined up and we just need to fill in the details. Let's make sure we get the first scene sorted out because right now we don't. And then I'm going to cut over what you've been working on because I think that's not a bad line. I'm going to use both of what you've stated. I'm going to include not everything, but I'm going to include parts of each one. Does that make sense? Okay. The river has, now, as I said, when you can have rivers have more than one feeder, the river has more than one what's it's not path, it has more than one what? What would you call it? Hello, Dungeons and Chronics, how are you doing? The river has more than one stream feeding into the main water course. You can see a deep hollow in the juncture that has formed a whirlpool. It looks like the undertow in the whole canoe, what am I going to say? Undertow in the whirlpool. It's very strong and is churning up white spray. Okay, what do you do? Okay, so there. How is that? We get the narrative stuff figured out first, then we worry about the mechanics. Honestly, people, I swear that it's always the mechanics that are least important in these things. It might not seem like it, but it is. So we'll come back to that in a second. Let us get our main description sorted out. The description. So we need to first get rid of this bit, and then we'll have some special notes. I want you to start thinking about, since I'm going to take what has already been presented to me, I want you to start thinking about special help. What might benefit? What sort of benefit would you have in a situation like this? What would give you potentially advantage on a D20 dice roll when you're doing a dice roll, when a dice roll applies? What sort of things would be beneficial. Now we kind of have a few ideas already there that we can use. But I'm going to type this in and do a hashtag, and I want you to start coming up with some ideas that include beyond what I've got here, which is frozen. Let's try again. Hashtag. What might grant advantage to D20 dice rolls in the river rapids skill challenge? Okay, right. No, I haven't seen everything that you guys are typing, so if I miss it and it's really important, do double hashtag or hashtag so I can see a hashtag there. Okay, so the first thing you'll notice is this special help note says any character with the sailor, pirate background or proficiency in water vehicles has advantage on any D20 checks during this action scene. Now I'm going to retain this. There's a reason why I selected that, the original skill challenge being the one on being, a ship in the storm. Our description is a little different. And I will just adjust this, get rid of this, and we will start working on that now. Description of the action scene. Player characters are traveling down a river in a raft, kayak, canoe, or on a tree log. I think that kind of covers everything. So that's what we're setting ourselves up for. That's our scenario. The characters are trying to travel to reach the mouth of the river, or a location along it as quickly as possible. Now, why have I put that in? One of the problems with the, using a raft, a kayak, or a canoe, or even a tree log, and traveling down river rapids is, why would you not just get off the canoe or the raft, go to the shoreline and walk? And we don't want them to do that, because walking is going to be slower. And the kayak, the raft, the canoe, the tree log is faster. So there has to be something pushing them. Otherwise, this doesn't work. Anytime you try to incorporate this, and it would be just as fast or beneficial to just simply get off the river, get to the shoreline, and just walk away, then this does not work. You're wasting your time. So there needs to be a time pressure. Without a time pressure, this doesn't work. Okay. Must save the raft. Save the raft, kayak, canoe, and the crew from damage, injury, or death, which is still possible, okay? Right, now, a little note here. There must be a time pressure. 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 There must be a time pressure time frame. There must be time pressure to get down the river that forces them to use the waterway rather than walk or run. Running's not going to be good enough. You have to get there fast, otherwise it doesn't work. All about the bear. It's all about the bear, is it? He disappears before you. Knowledge, Sphinx. Knowledge of Sphinx, knowledge of recent earthquakes, knowledge of surfing. Well, yes. Surfing skills, knowledge of 60s movies. Yeah. Oh, worship a water deity. That's not a bad idea. Let's do that. Public background. Worship. Worship a water deity. Let's do that. Have surfing. Skills. Surfing training. Training. Skills. That's for skills. What else is there? Successful spotter for a bad boat, sort of navigating different pedals, perception. No, don't go with perceptions. It's too easy. It's too easy if you make it that one. Hello, Michael Riggs. How are you doing? Navigation. Actually, aren't there some navigating tools in games? Like, I'm sure there is something that's around navigation. I can't remember. I think in 5e there's navigation. I'm pretty sure in older versions of D&D you had navigation too as a thing. Let me see if I can find it. So you might be onto something there. Although navigation usually revolves around the sea, I think you would still have skills in dealing with a river and river rapids if you're dealing with the sea. So I think that's something to consider for sure. I've just got to find it. Where is it? Oh, it's probably just going to be covered under water vehicles proficiency or training and that. Hello, how's it going? Ancient Dragon, hello, how are you? Dolphin, silkies. You're going to have magical river dolphins. Well, yes. I don't think it's going to be a standard thing to have that as a standard. So I won't include it, but I get it. Okay, so let me just grab the first part of that statement that people had put in there, because we need to actually get that in there. I need to make sure I keep a space for it too. Players' characters are traveling down a river in a raft, kayak, canoe, or on a tree log. The characters are trying to reach the mouth of the river or a location along it as quickly as possible. The characters must save the raft, kayak, canoe, and the crew from damage, injury, and death. And we want to have our opening statement, which is care of. You're going to see the screen getting a bit whack in a second, people. I apologise, but I'm going to take Shiner's idea. I'm going to cut this, copy, and I'm going to place it in here without the formatting. Is that got the formatting in it? What's this? Oh no, it's fine. Okay. A mist hangs over the river ahead of your raft, and the roar of water reaches your ears. The current increases and your raft begins to buck and shift. Right, now, we're not finished though. Okay, so let's take this. Okay. Okay, so we're going to take this bit here. And we're going to take that and we're going to drop it in. Because that's pretty good. Quite nice. It's been a bumpy... it's been a bumpy trip so far. Ahead you see rapids. Okay. Rapids and rocks. You're going to get rocks in any kind of rapids area no matter what, but it's just this is not the location necessarily that has the worst amount of rocks and rapids, right? So the other bit there, no, we're not going to use that. So I've taken a bit of each one of your suggestions. Okay, there we go. That's our line in. We've got a few notes on it to describe what's going on here, so you know as a game master what's going on, and you've got a bit of descriptive text, and we've got a note here. Okay, we'll put here game master note because we probably need to, otherwise you probably won't be aware of what's going on here. So we'll make sure I make it's obvious. Bold and underline. Okay, next, goal of the skill challenge. Now, nice and simple. The party must succeed on 3 group skill checks before getting 2 failures. Now, again, there's a problem with using this system. And I've pointed out before why it's not always a great idea to use this. We're still going to use it as our standard, but I'm going to put a provisor in here because it is possible that if the kayak or canoe or your raft hits the rocks, that you may wind up doing too much damage to it, and it doesn't, and they don't have anything other than to hang on to the pieces, so it might all just come apart on you. Ultimately too, it doesn't matter about this because we have a waterfall at the end of this. When you stick in a waterfall at the end of your skill challenge, it's pretty much going to cause a lot of trouble. Right, so this bit here may well be completely useless to you. Okay, let's just undo this and take that out. Okay, so rope bridge along the falls, leap. Well, possibly, but there's a couple of ways of dealing with this. Hashtag. So, pardon me. I want you to start thinking now about what happens. What do you do? How do you deal with a whirlpool? Hashtag. How do you deal with a whirlpool? So that is the first threat that's coming up. So I want you to start thinking about that. Control water has advantage. Well, we're not going to give them an advantage, prepare, cook and survive. If they have control water, that would allow them in some cases to probably have automatic success, which means we're going to start burning up their spell slots. And it's a high level spell, really. So I want you to start thinking about this. So you've got a river, multiple feeding streams into the main watercourse, and it's developed a big hole, a deep hole in the juncture, forming a whirlpool. What would you try to do with the raft, kayak, canoe, or the log to avoid getting sucked into it? Because that is what you're trying to do, is try to avoid getting sucked into it. I want you to start thinking about that now. Okay? Start writing in some suggestions, and I will fix this little bit of text. Parties must succeed on 3 group checks before 2 failures. Otherwise, the kayak, the raft, kayak, or canoe starts to sink. So, in other words, the worst thing you could do is wind up failing the first two. Okay, failing the first two is a bad thing. If the party is successful, the ship doesn't sink, and they can continue onward. Now the party is successful. The vessel doesn't sink, and they can continue onward. If the party fails overall, they will have to swim for the shoreline, for the riverbank. As the water vessel is broken up. Okay, so there's a couple of things going on here. There is a proviso I need to put in here to make sure that it's clear. This requirement doesn't supersede any issues created to the narrative of the challenge. Is that clear? Okay. That's pretty important to have there. Okay, so let's have a look and see what you people are chucking in there. It looks like there's a few things, which is great. Okay. +1, neutral water weird saves party to eat them alive. What? A +1, neutral water weird saves party to eat them. I'm lost. What I will do is, we're dealing with a whirlpool, and if you have control water, let's go down to alternative solutions. The control water spell can be used to reduce the strength of the whirlpool, granting automatic success. Now, this is only success for an individual. Remember, everybody has to be successful for the group to be successful. Well, half of you need to be successful for the group to be successful. But individual success can be granted by just using the control water spell, and that's it. So you're granted automatic success. There's a reason why I do this, people. It'll become clearer and clearer as we go. So we're going to include that right now. It's there. Okay? I should take a break, but I'm going to just work my way and see what you guys have got here. If the party fails and goes to the bottom of the whirlpool, could it actually be the mouth of a beast? It could be, but we're not dealing with that right now. Whirlpool equals Dizzy and Google into another vortex. That's how I'd introduce halfling. Okay. Cast anchor away from the whirlpool and pull away, hoping the anchor holds. Right. Okay. So what you've just suggested here is a grappling hook, essentially. A grappling hook and a rope. So let's use that. I think that's a good idea, Fred Hubber. Well done. So let's use something like that. Now, do we want to use it as part of a skill check, or do we want to make it as part of something else? I think what we're going to do is we're going to make it part of an alternative solution. Rather than it wind up being a strength athletics check, I'm not really interested in doing that. But to make it as an alternative, I like the idea of that a lot more. So let us go down here. Water walking, fireball, don't know what the heck that was all about. Let's go here, and I'm going to type in a grappling hook hook tied to a rope can be thrown toward the riverbank to act as an anchor so that the water vessel, we're just going to say raft, so that the raft can be pulled away from the whirlpool. Okay, grant advantage on all the party members D20 dice rolls for this stage. Okay. Okay. I'm also going to give. So let's see. This is going to give. So this is going to give you. I think what we do is we make this not a dice roll. I want to eliminate the dice roll because they're using a grappling hook and rope. What we might want to do is we might want to connect it to an attack roll. An attack roll is actually not a bad idea. Let's do that. Now that I think about it, we haven't used an attack roll in this, so let's do this. Let's go cut up here, paste, because the attack roll is not going to be hard. Okay, so what do we got here? The character makes an attack roll versus an armor class of 10 for the riverbank to succeed. We're going to go British. Thank you. Okay, so we have used an attack roll of our grappling hook. That makes sense, doesn't it? Grappling hook, throwing it, connecting, pulling on. That's all fine. So we've actually given them quite a lot of benefit to this. We also probably want to include the fact they should get some sort of automatic success for using this method. Granting automatic success. So let's do that. Copy. Paste. Granting automatic success. Additionally, give advantage on all the party members' D20 dice rolls for this stage. The character makes an attack roll versus. So there we go. So we've got that there. I've given that quite a lot of weight, if you haven't noticed. An enormous amount of weight. Hello, Derry. How are you? Summon a water elemental to carry the raft to safety. Fred, yes. And I think we had something there that was like come here. Cast the conjure elemental spell to summon a water elemental to help divert the whirlpool. And carry the raft past safely. Give automatic success. Now, why am I giving automatic success for casting spells? The reason being is, one, it's not random. Two, we are guaranteed of burning up their spells, and the more spells they use up, the better. Water walking, nobody's mentioned water walking in this situation, which you probably could do if you wanted to. Now, rope, couple of turtles, the sea turtles on the right, the whirlpool, right, okay. Whirlpool of ice is the source of snow. Approaching. I'm not sure what we're saying there. I'm a little lost. Can be turned into ice. Have you got something that would turn it into ice? turning it into ice might actually make it more dangerous. Is there something that would freeze the ice? So freezing the water around the whirlpool come on. Freezing the water around the whirlpool slows the current of the river in this location. And we'll give automatic success for that. Paste. Okay, so we've got a few alternatives. We're going to come back and I'm going to deal with this a little bit here because that's relatively easy. What else did we have here? Where we go? Who gave you a ring of true sight? I recognize it, bro. I'm lost. You've got me completely lost here. Can you turn the whirlpool into ice? Well, I think I've just marked it down, so we've got that one there. Okay. Worlds rather than calms. Okay, let me just see. I will need to take a quick break, but so characters can try to turn the raft by paddling harder into the river waves with a DC 20 athletic strength check. So we're making that process of just paddling. If you just paddle, it's going to be difficult. Praying a prayer from a character to their god for a miracle with a DC 25 religion intelligence check. So I think we put that in there. I can't remember why we wound up with that being there in the first place, but we'll leave it there. That's fine. I mean that gives us an attack roll. It gives us an ability check or a skill check, whichever you want to use. We don't have a saving throw, but I don't think it's necessary. We have a knowledge check that you can utilize. So there's those pieces. Now the rest of it here, these alternative solutions. Casting the shape water cantrip to shift some of the water, to shift some water out of the whirlpool. Now, shape water is a cantrip, but I'm still going to grant automatic success. You know why? Because very few people take shape water. And it's not the end of the world if you do something like this. You don't have to. You can adjust this. You don't have to do it. You don't have to write it the way that I've written it here. Okay. Hello, Steve. Steve, thank you for the $10 super chat. What have you got here? Thanks for all you are doing. Thank you, Steve. I do appreciate it. Hope you are feeling better. I am feeling a lot better than I was before. I'm trying. I've been sick and I've been a little bit depressed, but I am feeling a bit better about the whole process. It's been rough, but I think I'm going to get through it. I think it's gonna work out. Okay. I have not gotten back to you. Right? Sorry, I haven't gotten back to you. Oh no, that's right. I did just sign up for events at Gen Con this year. Oh, good. So you're going to go to Gen Con? Great. I'm glad to hear it. Be safe. I will. Big vibes to one of the best on here. Well, thank you, Steve. So I'm looking forward to. We're going to hang out and play D&D Basic on Friday in New Zealand, Thursday in North America, with a bunch of people. We're going to build characters for Basic D&D or Back Me D&D. I'm looking forward to that. I think the Game Master Roundtable is going to probably be really good for a lot of us who are sort of struggling right now. So, casting the Shape Water cantrip to shift some water out of the whirlpool. I think what we're going to do is, instead of it being automatic success, we're going to give you advantage. Okay, casting the shape water cantrip to shift water out of the whirlpool grants advantage on any D20 dice roll to complete the stage. So this means that if you're going to use if you're just going to paddle, then you would use this spell. So I've kind of made this a lot weaker in terms of its effect because it's a cantrip. Okay, casting the tsunami spell and directing it to okay, here we go. So casting the tsunami spell and directing it toward the riverbank makes it easier to pass the whirlpool. Remember, these are all individual checks. Just because it's automatic success for an individual, that's automatic, it doesn't mean automatic success for the entire group skill check. That's a completely different thing. Okay. Casting the conjure water elemental diverts. Yes, we did that. Water walking. Nobody came up with an idea around water walking, so we'll leave that for now. I think, don't panic. Smash into a wall of force. No thanks. So yes, swim, panic and swim for it. Yeah, I think you'll find that panicking and swimming for it would be a disaster. So let's put that in as what would happen if you do that. Jumping off the raft and swimming for the riverbank is automatic failure, and the party will have to pull you back on board when you are pulled under. Do not swim for it. So I'm putting that in, and I'm putting that here because it may be something that somebody considers doing. So we don't really want them to do that. Dimension door. Save yourself and your favorite NPC. Yeah. So dimension door is a good point. You could dimension door and just teleport. I guess the problem is that now you have eliminated yourself from the skill challenge. You're going to get left behind. Dimension door can be cast to escape to the shoreline, to the riverbank, but you fail this stage of the skill challenge unless you can get back to the raft for stage 2. I'm putting that in. Okay, it's not a bad idea. You'd still be alive, but alive doesn't mean you succeeded. Does that make sense? Remember, the reason we have to do this is if we don't travel down the river, we will. I mean, surviving is one thing, but you would still fail the fact that you needed to get from one place to another very quickly, and this is sort of part of where this is going. But Fred, it's still a good idea. It's something that somebody might consider doing. So let's have a way of dealing with that. This is exciting. Good. Hello, Charles Butler. Now, Steve Zurich. Thank you for the super chat. I almost forgot. You're no longer a patron, Steve. I forgot. Charles Butler is a patron, Sportsman Patreon. Thank you for being here. Whoa, you're gonna be live yeah, we're gonna go live with the Beck Me game. It's gonna be on Wally DMs. We're gonna do the character building for Beck Me or D&D basic, and then we're gonna run a one-shot Beck Me game with me, AJ Pickett, Wally, DM, Tabletop Bob, and oh, who is it? There's so many people who wanted to be there. I think it's the OKSDM, but I can't remember. There's one other. There's a few of us. It's going to be a bigger table than we normally been running. Well, thank you. Okay. There's a creationist convention. Oh, is there? I'm going to root for the canopy theory. Okay. Sacrifice the wizard to the deity of storms and the sea and ask them to... Right, yeah, that's the one. Hello, Julius. How are you? Nice. Have run a scene like this. I'm surprised that half of voters have run a scene like this. Derp, it's very common to use a scene like this. And it's probably one of the more difficult things to do because magic, that's the problem, is magic can undo something like this really, really quickly. Old tactic years ago. Yeah. Hope they are emptying barrels to tie to the staff. All climbing. Oh, we're going to have a barrel. You're talking about like the hobbits and the traveling in the barrels. Water walk. So let's go here. Casting water walk. Now, how many people does water walk affect? When you cast water walk, I think the problem with water walk, and it's probably going to come up. If somebody's high enough level, they will probably use it. But doesn't that mean that the entire party can water walk, not just one person? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it affects more than one individual. Water. Let me just check on that. Let's make sure we get this right. Water walk. Spell grants the ability to move across any liquid surface such as water, acid, mud, snow, quicksand, or lava, as if it were harmless solid ground. Oh dear. The creatures mold in earth. Yes. Up to 10 willing creatures. Oh my gosh. So it would be like a trump card, but it's a high level spell. So, okay. Casting water walk will allow the whole party to walk over the whirlpool as if it is difficult terrain and drag the raft behind them to the next stage. This grants automatic success for the whole group. You're going to have to be careful. There are always spells that can do something like this, and there's no point fighting it when it happens. I can assure you now, if you find yourself in a situation when somebody has water walk, just let it be, okay? You've managed to get them to burn up the spell, and now they have a really good reason to have the spell there in the first place. So we've got that done, and how are we doing for time? So I've only got half an hour to do the rest. So success, okay, so let's see it. So this is for a group check. The raft is kept upright and free of okay, so we're not going to have to worry about, okay, so we're going to put kayak here or canoe. because if you're using a kayak or canoe, yeah, there would be flooding. Success. The raft, kayak or canoe is kept upright and free of sinking and stops it sinking. Okay, so now just because you take on water doesn't mean that you're going to fail this stage here with a group check. That doesn't mean anything like that. It just means that that's one failure. You've got taken on board a bit of water, and you can still ride this thing down there upside down if you needed to. So that's not a problem. So that we're not actually undermining ourselves by having this as a criteria for success and failure. Failure. The ship is swamped. The raft, kayak, or canoe is swamped with water. Anything that requires maneuvering the raft, the water vessel, now has disadvantage on the D20 dice roll. So basically we're going to, this is our consequence, maneuvering. So failure just means for the group that it's going to be harder the next time they make a dice roll, okay? So we don't want to fail this one if we can. The whirlpool is a bad thing. Okay, so individual consequences. That's a group consequence. We've got individual consequences. The character holds on tight and stays on there and stays on the raft, kayak, or canoe. Okay, so that's success. Failure. The massive power of the whirlpool knocks the characters around the character loses a setback worth of hit points and bludgeoning damage and is prone. So that's if you're standing up. If you're not standing up, you won't be prone, but you're just going to take some damage. So we're not trying to drown them here if we can help it. Okay, drowning just means they're dead. Okay, so we can eliminate this bit here. Yes, I'm going to put this up onto Patreon. I'm just trying to get it done at this present time. So I can assure you I will put it up onto Patreon when it's done. Okay, now we're dealing with rocks. I know what you're thinking. Let's do another hashtag and let's see what you come up with. Water walk carrying a rope to shore to pull the raft to safety. Yes, you could do it that way, but water walk means they can probably all just walk on the water. So hashtag. So what would you do to avoid sharp rocks in a river with strong rapids? So now you've got the rocks. We'll deal with the rocks, shall we, people? We've got rocks coming up. What are you going to do? What are the things that you could do to help yourself in this situation? So there are large sharp rocks poking out of the tuning water. The raft or kayak is being pushed toward the rocks and might punch a hole in the kayak's hull or break the raft. What do you do? That is your problem. Okay. And I have put down a number of things that we could use, some alternative things that could take place. I'm going to wait for you guys to come up with some ideas. I want you to think about it. What would you do to avoid this causing you trouble? This is the time to start thinking about it. Give me some ideas. So I'm going to start working on the consequences for failing and stuffing it up. Okay, because that's usually pretty easy for me to figure out. Solutions and actions is different. So you got rocks, you're on a raft, in a kayak, canoe with other people, what do you do to avoid smashing into those rocks? Start thinking of some ideas. Yes. Okay. So Shina's already got. Okay. Characters can try to turn the raft, say, with paddle as a rudder to avoid protruding rocks with a DC 14 athletics check. So we're going to make it roughly about there. So I've already got one in there. But the poling off, reinforce the raft, it's a bit late to do that. Reinforcing the raft, how? Rocks stable. Okay, hang on, Derry, what do you got here? Rock stable as base, but not on top. Lasso boulder to fall on top of you, double damage. I don't understand any of that. Place shields to protect the hull while trying to steer around the rocks. Okay. So let's take this. Here. Use the paddle as a pole to push off the rocks with a DC survival. Okay, so athletics or survival check. So I've put both as a possibility. I think that's fine. Athletics, strength, survival check. So we've got an 18. So I've got your pole one. What else do we have here? Somebody else had said something. Shields. Avoid rocks, grasp on, take rocks with you. Reinforce the bodies, the body of your enemies. Okay, so let's deal with the shield one. Okay, characters can act as spotters on the front of the ship. No, we're not using that. It's not a crow's nest, so we're not going to be using that. That would not make any sense, so we're going to ditch this. And for those of them, there'll be a couple of people who will just say, I'm just going to paddle, right? But we're making that DC very, very hard. Copy. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to duplicate it right here. Characters can try to turn the raft by paddling harder in the river waves. Okay, so basically it's the same as the first one. Now you can see there's a bit of duplication going on here. We've got a lot of athletics going on, but this is where you're going to start coming up with some ideas outside of this, right? And we have one already, and I'm going to put it under the spell disintegration can be used to destroy a rock, giving automatic success. So we're going to leave that there. Casting the tiny fortress spell on an outcropping rock will crush it, and then dismissing it grants automatic success. Now, your shield idea, which I think is quite clever, honestly. Holding a shield in front of the raft, kayak or canoe helps protect the water vessel from damage caused by the rocks. Okay. So we're going to grant automatic success for that. We're not going to give an advantage, we're just going to give automatic success. Copy. Because I like the idea that you could try and do something like that a lot. You don't have to agree with me though, people. You can do it your own way. It's all good. I'll see you later. See you, prepare, cook and survive. Okay, so what have I got here? An outlandish idea. Cast fireball at a spot in the water. The water then boils away, creates a void that can pull the boat towards as the rest of the water fills in. Oh, I see. Rope a rock and reverse keel. Moving slow. Okay, so let's see. You want to do a lasso job on this thing. Let's see if we can do a lasso job on this thing. Use a rope to lasso a rock on the it's a rope to lasso a rock on the well, where are you going to be pulling it? Rock on the riverbank to pull it away from a sharp obstacle. Now, grants advantage to everyone in the group making a d20 dice roll for this stage. Okay, so got that there. So we've got a few alternatives. Consequences. Okay, so it's not the ship, it's the raft in this case. The raft is kept away from the reef, from the rocks. It's not the reef, it's just the rocks. Failure that the raft, kayaks or canoes hull crashes into the rock, creating a hole for water to flood the lower to flood it. So that's for the group. Okay, individual consequences. So we're getting close to where we need to be, and we're also running out of time. What do we got here? Okay. Oh, okay, thank you. Somebody's already dealt with that. Okay, cool. Over each rock so they don't matter. I suppose gust of wind could blow the boat away from the danger. Yeah, so gust of wind. So alternatives here we're looking at now. The gust of wind spell. And somebody had said something else was okay. Dropping a portable hole over a rock. Okay, we'll come back to that if I get a chance. I'm just going to put them in there as alternatives that people might consider. So we've got this one now. Individual consequences for this. I often don't spend enough time on consequences, so this is why I'm kind of focusing a bit more on that rather than what you're putting into chat. I will get them down if I can. I had gust of wind. I had that one. Okay, stone to mud. Casting stone to mud is a good idea. Yes. Punching the pillow. What? Wall of force to create a smooth water slide. Okay. Wall of force to create a protective barrier around the water vessel. Okay, right. So, back to individuals. So, the character braces themselves against the so the character braces themselves against the impact with the rock, and is not injured. Okay, so that's success, pretty simple. That's individual. Failure. So these are just examples, people. Failure, the impact with the rock. Knocks the character prone. Where are we? Prone on the raft. And the character loses a hit dice and is prone. No. Hit dice or a set back worth of hit points. That's that one done. Okay. Silver Surfer fans. Silver Surfer fans, are you going to unite, are you? Okay, so now, how do you deal with a waterfall, people? Hashtag. How do you deal with a waterfall on a river with a raft? Let's see what you come up with for the grand finale, which is our waterfall. Gravel rapids, smooth. Okay. Hello, Buried Axe. How are you? Mud flow. Okay, so let me read out what we have here. The river comes to a stop ahead. You can hear the thunderous roar of a waterfall. Your raft or kayak is being forced towards the drop-off. You don't know how tall the waterfall is, but the noise indicates it must be large. The characters have decided. The characters must decide how to approach this new obstacle. Now, I've got here some stuff from our sailing ship thing, but that's not what we're going to use, obviously. And while you're coming up with solutions for how you would deal with a waterfall, like it's a big enough waterfall that it could hurt you bad, we need to know how to solve this problem, right? So you're going to come up with that. I'm going to do the consequences for it all going completely pear-shaped on us. Getting out of the water or learning to fly. Oh, learning to make the raft fly. Okay, so first one is casting a spell to make the raft fly will give automatic success to the whole party for this stage. Okay, I think we can assume that that's probably going to do that. Some featherfall, yes, okay. Casting featherfall allows everyone in the party to fall off the waterfall safely, but the raft, kayak or canoe is destroyed. So you save your lives, but you lose your water vehicle. Okay, I got it. Hello, Wally. How are you doing? How's it going there? Yeah, Featherfall is an underrated spell for sure. Well, provided they have it prepared and ready to go. Get out of the water. So swimming for the shoreline would probably be under one of the. Okay, so let's have a look here. Now this isn't going to work. So casting disintegrate won't help you. The fortress thing won't help you. So we're going to get rid of those. Characters can spot from the. No, we're not doing a crow's nest thing. This is not going to apply in the slightest. So we're going to get rid of a perception check. Perception check is the super skill. We don't want to encourage it too much anyway. We are running out of time, so I know I've got to get this done. I might be able to work a little bit on it later on. So not taking down the sails. Yes, a waterfall, man. We're going to finish it with a waterfall. We're going for the big one now. Firstly, starting with the prayer to the deity. Secondly, maybe cast grease on the raft's hull to give you some forward momentum and not pummel down. You're going to go faster. You want to go faster? Really? Okay, so let's I think you guys are going to have to do a lot better than that. Okay. Characters can try to turn the ship with a rudder to avoid protrude. No, well, that ain't going to work because characters can try to turn the raft with a pedal as a rudder to get closer to the riverbank. So that they can get off the raft. Now we're going to make it quite hard. Why as a rud? Is that rudder? Okay. We're going to make the DC quite difficult. Let's make that a. Do I want to make it a 20 or do I want to make it even harder than that? Because using it as a rudder is probably not going to work very well. We're going to make it 25. We're going to make it really hard. If you're going to try to do it that way, it's not going to work very well. Okay. Grappling hook and rope. Snag a low-hanging branch or rock on the side. So Wally, so one of you had already mentioned this. So we can actually take that, because Wally makes a good point. We can use that mechanic. Taking down sails will not help us because we do not have sails. But we can do this. And there's a couple of other mechanics we've already used that we can repurpose and reuse in this case. So turning so this is okay. So I'm going to do the raft with a pedal as a rudder. Or pedal harder to get closer to the riverbank. So, okay, so we've got that one there. Let's find our lasso, because we did the lasso thing. Now, where do we have it here? Using a rope, lasso, copy, and we'll go down here. Where is it? There. Paste. Use a rope to lasso a rock on the riverbank or a low hanging branch to pull it away from the waterfall. Grants advantage to everyone in the group making D20 dice rolls for this stage. So we're not going to make it automatic success, but we'll certainly make it easier. So we've got that down. So what has Fred said? Use the raft sail as a parachute. Well, I don't think we have a sail on our raft. Unless you have a sail involved, then don't worry about that. That's good. We've got that one there. Well, flying is pretty obviously going to save your butt. Should be obvious at that point, right? Okay, let's see if we can finish off some of the basics around here. So we've got making the raft fly, casting the fly spell, and flying off the raft to the riverbank. Grants automatic success. Okay, it's the fly spell. That makes sense, right? We've got featherfall. We've got this like so. Here we go. Success. The ship is kept away from the waterfall. This is the group check. So it's consequence of group check for success from the waterfall and dragged onto the riverbank. Now it is possible you lose the raft, your kayak, or your canoe, but you still survive, right? Failure. The rafts. Raft, kayak or canoes hull crashes into the rocks, the bottom of the falls, and is destroyed. Okay. Destroyed. Okay, so we got that one. Now, individual success, characters, get clear of the waterfall and make it to the riverbank, or the bottom of the waterfall. So that's that. Now failure, the impact with the rocks, at the bottom of the waterfall causes the character to lose a hit dice and is prone. So we could remove hit points, but I'm just going to say hit dice. So we're not actually trying to kill them. Hit dice or a set back worth of hit points. And is prone. I have fallen down a waterfall. It wasn't that tall, and I just got injured and scraped up. So it can happen. You just have to land in the right place. It's a bit hard to do, actually. Do not take your kayak up waterfalls or down waterfalls. I have done this. It's not that bright. It's a little risky. Anyway, I think we have the bulk of what we needed to have there, unless somebody had something else they'd mentioned here. Summon an ancient dragon. Okay. Yeah. Who invented the loom? Bronze. Okay, all right. Hi, Bible Fire. How are you doing? God, this looks like dairy again. I was a wee bit hopeful that we overlooked parachutes, not linear in effect. Well, if you have a parachute, if you guys create a parachute, then it's do I need to write that down? It should be obvious what's going to happen. If you've all got Aarakocras, then why are you on the river in the first place? You probably fly faster. Anyway, so this is mostly done. Characters can try to turn the craft or paddle harder, so that's really simple. Lassoing a rock, really basic sort of stuff. We've got a process for doing that. And then we've got a few solutions here. Now this is not complete, people. I want to make it clear you can add in additional stuff. There's nothing wrong with adding stuff. I am just giving you, so what would happen? How would you approach it if they decided to do something like this? Again, never let the narrative be broken. Always remember that the narrative is more important than anything else. We'd never want to look at our dice rolling or the way we're applying the different features and abilities in the game. We don't want that to be lost or be dominant. We want the narrative to always be the strongest aspect. Okay, so I think that's good. I think we're done for today with that. That's a lot of work in a very short space of time. I should go to work. I'm probably shift coordinator today, so I can't afford to be late, which is entirely possible. So let's have a quick look at chat here. Let's have a look at this this poll too. Actually, I haven't looked at the poll yet. So I'd asked you a question in the poll to see what people had to say. I'm hoping people enjoyed this. We will come back and do some more of them. I will keep trying to build skill challenges or adventure challenges or action challenges, whatever you want to call it, that are things that you can reuse, that will be really useful to you, that aren't too specific. Do you know what I mean? You can take the same concept and apply it in other situations. Have you included a raft or canoe trip down Whitewater River Rapids in a role-playing game? Yes. So 56% out of 23 votes said yes. No, 34%. Well, those no people, now you have the tools available to make it happen. Incomplete, 4%. Now you know how to finish it off. And just watching, 4%. Well, great. Awesome. I think we did a pretty good job here, people. I think we got a lot done in a very short space of time. It's always difficult to make that happen. Yeah, you've got enough tools here to make anything possible. Lots of fun times ahead of us. And yeah, in two more months, we'll come back and we'll build another one. I'll try to get this up on Patreon in the by Friday, around Friday. It depends. I've got this Game Master Roundtable thing going on. Might be a bit difficult, but I'll try. I'll try to get it up. I know it looks like it'll be a lot of fun. I know people want to use it. Okay, so I want to say a huge thank you to everybody in chat. I want to say a huge thank you to all of my patrons, Steve Zurich for the super chat in particular. Thank Wally, thank you for being here. Charles, Dungeons and Chronics, Fred Hubber, who's been awesome. Ancient Dragon, who's been piping in there. Bible Fire, Dairy. Who else have we got here? I said Charles, didn't I? Buried Axe. Shiner81 has been hanging out with us. Prepare, Cook and Survive. Like, all of you have been great. Derp has been here as well. There's been a bunch of you who really helped build this out, make this a bit more interesting. Hopefully you had a good time. I had a good time. And Julius, don't forget Julius. I know Julius was here as well. There's been a few of you. I know these streams are really long and they're a bit hard to rewatch if you ask me. So look, thank you very much. As I said, the document for this will go up onto Patreon. Probably needs to be done pretty quickly. It looks like it's mostly done, so it shouldn't be too hard. Thank you. And wherever you are in the world, whether it be the morning, the afternoon, the night, or the wee early morning, please look after yourself, your family, and your friends. Be nice to your neighbours. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.